Wow, that's a big introduction. Setting out the future. Hi, everyone. I'm Raz. I'm a research lead at Oculus. It's really great to be here and meet all of you guys. I'm actually kind of new to London. I just moved here 4 months ago, so getting to know everyone, getting into the city. And this is me. Hello. So I kind of joined Facebook 2 years ago, but before that I was an academic. Made the jump. I was a PhD, postdoc, and then I decided to join Facebook. I kind of say that I'm obviously a UX researcher, but also a sociologist, experimentalist, surveyist, interviewist, data scientist, and Steph also added comedianist, kind of. We'll see later. So at Facebook, we do research, and the main reason to do research here is this thing, right? So we need to foster empathy among developers, among designers. We need to get people to understand that who are the people we're designing for, and making products that actually what we call sheep love. So we use many methods at Facebook. We use all these long list of methods, but also we have people that come from very diverse backgrounds. So we have people with PhDs in anthropology, geography, sociology, information science, and only by kind of combining these people from very diverse backgrounds, using all these different methods, we can actually get this really good signal about the products we're working on. Our challenge at Facebook is to keep a holistic point of view, use multiple methods, move fast, but at the same time that we move fast, we also need to do good science. So the fact that we do research in 2 weeks doesn't mean that it has to be bad science. Keep people in view, and then focus on product and design. These are the main challenges. And then a few months ago, I moved to Oculus from the Facebook side. How many people here have had the chance to try Oculus? Cool. So right now, Oculus has 2 products out that people actually use. The first one is the Rift headset. And that is kind of like the high-end virtual reality headset. In a few months, we're going to release the touch controllers, which are really, really cool, that you can actually see your hands in VR. So you look down and you see your hands. It's pretty amazing. You can grab stuff. You can do thumbs up. And in addition to that, we have another product out together with Samsung, which is called the Samsung Gear. And this is really, I find these products really interesting because it kind of democratizes VR, right? So the Samsung headset uses Samsung phones, and what happens is that a lot of people buy that as kind of the first step into VR. Also, sometimes when people get a new phone, a Samsung phone, they get a free VR headset. So you have all this kind of flow of people that never heard about VR before. They have no idea what it is, and they get it, and they try it for the first time. So we need to cater to these kind of 2 audiences. On the one hand, these kind of people that invest in the VR, in the high-end Rift handset, and on the other hand, people that maybe just got it for free with their phone. So for the people in the audience that actually tried VR before in Oculus, you probably recognize this screen. So this is kind of the home environment when you first put on the Gear headset or the Rift. And you can install games, and you can play games, and you can watch things. But a lot of the experience until now was kind of single player. So you on your own, you're doing the experience. We as Facebook, and Oculus as part of Facebook, we want to make immersive VR social, right? So there are examples before of Second Life or other VR experiences, but immersive VR is different. When I joined the Oculus team, I had all these designers and developers come up to me, and they're like, this is new. There's so many new questions. We have to do research and understand this new terrain. And I'm like, well, there are questions, but they are not new questions. They're the same old questions with a different format, and we need to understand that. So in 1991, there was this book by Howard Rangel called Virtual Reality that kind of like surveyed the field, and he did an amazing work. I highly recommend this book. A few months ago, when I was back in Menlo Park in our headquarters, I actually invited Howard over to give a talk. And part of that, I told him, let's just try out VR and see what you think. And he was like, VR, I tried it before, I wrote a book about it. It's okay, it's whatever. And I was like, no, come on, give it a shot. So we went into the demo room. So he went to one demo room, he put the headset on, he put the touch controllers. I went to the other room, I put the headset, the touch controllers. And we started playing ping pong in VR. And we started handing things over to one another. And when we did that, first of all, he started laughing really, really hard. And then he said, wow, OK, so this is it. It's here. And I think a lot of people in the industry are starting to understand that VR is kind of starting to be the thing. And more people are investing in it, and especially Facebook. And when we think about investing in VR, we're thinking about making VR social, because that's what Facebook does, right? We connect people. We have this kind of really strong social experience for people. And we want to have the same thing in VR. So how do we create this kind of activities and social presence in VR? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Just in kind of giving you a short recap about VR. So before we, presence in VR is this kind of overwhelming sensation that you are there, right? You put the headset on, and you look around, and you just feel that you're there. So it can be like standing on a cliff, watching robots coming at you, or shooting things. But then there's another thing, which is social VR, which is not only being there, but it's being there with others. And being there with others facilitates these social norms that we already know and exist in other places, such as keeping interpersonal distance, or turn-taking and giving attention to people, or actually just figure out what the other person's mood is based on their gestures or their feedback, audio feedback. So today what I'm going to talk about is two products that we announced 2 weeks ago in our OC3 conference in San Jose. The first one is Oculus Rooms, and the second one is Oculus Avatars. So let's start with Rooms. And before I start with Rooms, I want to show you this picture. So you probably ask yourself, this is a laundry machine. What does it have to do with VR? When I joined the team and I started working on social VR, a good friend of mine, who's also the product manager I'm working on this project, told me, I have this concept of laundry friends. Right? So laundry friends are these friends that no matter what we do, we hang out together, but it's always fun. So we can have laundry together, but it's still going to have fun. It's still going to be fun. And I want to do this thing. I want to create this kind of product that we can have these laundry friends hang out together and experience fun times with each other. And if we look at Erving Goffman and the framing theory, we see this kind of activity sets the stage for interaction and enables the kind of the close friendships that we want to foster. So when thinking about group interactions and activities, we came up with these kind of 4 main pillars. The first one is the visual consumption. The second one is the audio consumption, playing games, and actually going somewhere. So if you think about hanging out with your friends, and Saturday night or sometime over the weekend night, and these are kind of the main things you're going to do with your friends, and we wanted to do that in VR. So here's an example. This is Oculus Rooms, and this is the TV area that we designed. So as you can see here, we have 4 people in different places, hanging out together, watching TV, sharing photos, sharing this experience of watching something together in VR. Second experience is this kind of fun, lightweight games. So as you can see, these 4 people are playing a memory game. and they just kind of like hang out. It's a lot of fun. So whenever we have a break, we just like put the headset on and start playing this memory game. I'm really good at it, by the way. And this is another view of that, so you can see, you can actually see what the other person is doing. So we use this kind of like gaze signal to show you what other people are looking at. So in addition to the head movement, we also have the gaze, the interaction ray. And in addition, we also added this kind of like app launcher, so you can meet up with your friends in VR, no matter where they are, and you can go into other apps together. So think about playing, video games or watching Hulu together. When you go into this area, you all say, OK, let's go to Hulu. And then the countdown starts, and you all move into Hulu. There you go. Cool. So that's rooms, and this is coming in the next few weeks to Gear headsets. So if you have a Gear headset, you can actually hang out with your friends in that environment, which is really fun. The second thing I wanted to talk about is Oculus Avatars, and this is a work I did together with Mike and Will. And this is a really interesting question that we wanted to understand when we started work on social, right? So one of the main things in providing and facilitating social interactions is the presentation of self, right? We know that from Facebook. We know that from the world. And we wanted to make sure that we have a good platform to provide that to people and to developers. So how do we do that? Creating this kind of like really good avatars is a balancing act, right? Because on the one hand, you have this tension between the visual realism and the behavioral realism. And what we figured out that even just like if you look back at the early days of animation, where there's just like a few lines that created Mickey Mouse, these kind of like lines were creating an effect of believability, and people use that as kind of like a cue for the rest, right? So it doesn't have to be state-of-the-art in computer-generated content. We can just use this kind of like very basic line and have the rest of our brain kind of like create the rest. So this is an example from a video game, so you can see like a very believable, highly fidelity avatar on the left, and then very like basic avatars on the right, very abstract. But what we saw is that in the very abstract avatars, people still kind of like recognize their friends without even having this like very, high fidelity features. And that was really interesting, and that's kind of like the thing that guided us when we went on, and we created these kind of like ground rules for avatars. So the first one is leave it to the brain. The second one is maximizing fidelity, and the third one is stay humanoid. And I'm going to dive into each one of these now. So these are the avatars that we created, and as you can see, we only show the things that we know. We only show the things that we have data for. So for example, if we have the head movement, that's the thing we're going to show. If we have the touch controllers and we can show your hands, we're going to show that. But we don't show the wrist. We don't show all the other stuff that we don't know because we don't want to break this kind of like believability of the avatar. We want to keep the immersion. And as you can see, people actually understand and kind of like build out the rest of the body without showing that. So this is kind of like the topology of the avatar. So as you can see, there's the body presence, the head, the hands, and the different materials. So when we started working on the avatar, one of the really interesting things that I think we came up with based on research is that people obviously wanted the avatars to look like themselves. They were like, why can't you just take a photo and make an avatar of myself? And that's not really possible right now, and especially on Gear. And that's why we came up with this kind of like a metaphor of projection, right? So as you can see, the avatars are projected from the bottom, and that kind of solves a lot of the design problems that we had and how people interact with avatars. So when we designed the body of the avatar, there was this kind of like really interesting fine line between this kind of like blob of material and this person in a straitjacket, and someone naked, right? So this really small differences in the transparency really kind of like change how we perceive the avatar. And what we came up with is this idea of like the neckline really opens up a way to customize the avatar. So you can select different materials and different clothing, like a suit and a tie, or a dress, or a hoodie. And that tells a lot about yourself and how you present yourself to others. In addition, we created this kind of like a mirror, an avatar editor, where you can actually like look at yourself and look at the different materials. Also, look at and set up the different heights. So because we have the projection, the avatar can kind of like control how big it is in the space. Yeah. In addition, one of the other things that were really important for us was to make sure that we have a wide range of gender, age, and different face shapes. So as you can see, we have different avatar faces. We had consultants that came in and helped us make sure that we have a very wide range, and we're actually going to add more and more as we release these. Yeah. So as I said, we had the avatar editor with a mirror that you can kind of like control how you look towards, and you can kind of like play around and select different eyewear and different materials, and that really kind of like provides people with a way to customize and create their own self in VR. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that people understood in this process was that this avatar is going to kind of like service them in all the other apps on Oculus. So that's why we also went with this kind of like an abstract of very basic avatars that can work in very different environments. So think about having this avatar used in like a very serious war game or whatever, and then going into like Hulu. So you probably you want to use the same avatar, and it needs to work in all these different environments. So there's a lot of designers in the room, and we wanted to provide with some kind of like basic understandings of how to facilitate first interactions in VR. So I think going forward and creating these new experiences, the first thing that is really important in social VR is letting people see how they look like. The first thing that people ask me in the research that I've done in VR is like, how do I look like? What is my avatar? So providing this self-reference is super important. The second one is obviously the hand awareness, especially with the touch controllers. People have no understanding of how the hands work, and seeing your hands in VR in the first time is really, really disorienting. It's really weird. And that's something that when you create this experience, you have to take in consideration. And the last thing is these group interactions. So a lot of the learning curve of social VR grows around these very lightweight interactions that you can facilitate. So if you have people stand around the desk and there's a game, and people understand that they can start playing a game, they learn about this kind of like new way of interacting in social VR. For example, these are a bunch of avatars, people that use a pinball game, and you can see that it's quite acceptable to look away from someone at kind of like a comedy club or during your screening, but you can still bond with people and have your shadow experience, although you're not looking at each other. The main takeaways that I want you to have from this talk is that immersive social VR experiences are here and are really exciting. When people see their friends or their family for the first time in VR, it's a very magical moment. People really kind of like remember that, and we should definitely facilitate that more and more. The second one is don't fake it. Let the brain figure out the rest. You saw with the avatars, although there was nobody, there were no harms, people still understood and realized what the rest of the body looked like. That was really important. And then the last one is onboarding people into the social VR for the first time. is really important, as you need to show them how they look like, because the way they perceive themselves will help them, will help them navigate their social experiences. Cool. All right, so that's me for today. I wanted to also plug that we are hiring. So feel free to reach out after the talk. I'd love to get to know you guys. And yeah, that's it. We have a mic here. So if anyone has a question, feel free to come up, and I'd love to answer. Thanks, guys. Hey.
I just wanted to ask, what was the thing that convinced the author of that book, Virtual Reality, that it had arrived?
Mm. I asked him, as a good researcher. And the two things were, first of all, like the fidelity, so like, and also the response, so how fast the response was from the controllers. Yeah. And yeah, if you can get the touch controllers when they come out, there's pre-order. I'm not plugging it because I work at Oculus. I'm plugging it because it's really transformative. It's an amazing experience seeing your hands and manipulating things in VR.
I heard from somewhere that, well, first of all, you're saying that people get a bit disorientated when they see their hands. Mm. But I also heard from somewhere that people get disorientated when they don't see their feet or their legs, actually, when they're looking down. Is that something that you found through the research?
So I think I touched upon that a little bit with the idea of the projection. Mm. And when you have this kind of like light coming from the people realize that it's, they can't see their feet, but they see some kind of like a light coming from the bottom.
Cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of fidelity, how detailed, what level of detail has Oculus got to with the screen?
Well, so there's a difference between the Rift and the Gear. There is I think like for the Rift, there are experiences that are actually pretty amazing. I'm not, there's like things that heavy video gamers said that they didn't see before. I would really encourage you to try it out.
But are you at 4K yet on the screen, or?
No.
Can you talk a little bit about the kind of prototyping process that you take, and if there was anything interesting that you found during your research?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so obviously there are not a lot of prototyping tools out there. We use different tools, and a lot of it is designing using the Rift. So we use the Rift as a tool for the design. So you have to like create something, test it out, create it again, test it out. So it's not a very easy process. I guess like in the next few years, prototyping tools will evolve and it will be easier. Right now we use the Rift as the main tool for that. Yeah.
Hi. So in the film WALL-E, you see all these people on mobility scooters with VR headsets going around who are really overweight and obese. And my area of interest really is activity tracking. And you kind of see with Pokemon Go that augmented reality really encouraged people to be more physically active. Mm. And now with more controllers and, I don't know, possibly lots of other things in the future, have you looked at like how VR can actually encourage people to be more physically active? I know there's VR sickness, but that's just technical things which can be sorted out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, so I mean, research into VR has been going on in academia for decades. A lot of like application of VR in health and training. Organization like NASA uses Rift with the touch controllers for their training. So yeah, there's a lot of work that have gone into that, and yeah, I think it's fascinating. I really can't wait to see. Yeah.
I have a question about the environments that people are actually in. How important is the design of those in terms of kind of making it a successful experience for people? Do you have to think a lot about where the TV is and stuff?
Yeah, it's a funny question because when we started Rooms, it was all blank space, so there was no environment. And then we kind of like tried playing around with just like having like a small room and a bigger room and like, you know, an open space. And this kind of like trial and error really kind of like solidified the importance of an environment and the colors of the environment and the design. Like with Oculus Rooms, what we decided to do is go with the look and feel of Oculus Home. So it will feel as kind of like an extension of that. So when people go into Oculus for the first time, I showed kind of like the first, you know, thing you see, and it feels like a living room. There's a fireplace, there's sofas, there's all kinds of stuff. And Oculus Rooms is kind of like, you know, the rooftop that you can go from the home. So we kept the same kind of like architecture, design, interior design language, and I think that facilitates some kind of like a continuity in the narrative that people have when they use Oculus.
Right.
Cool.
Thank you, Raz.
Thank you.